Inside Utah Politics.
Time now for a media perspective on the 2021 legislative session. For that, we turn to Bryan Schott. He is a political correspondent for the Salt Lake Tribune. Bryan, great to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
You got it. Hey, let's start off with process. This is going to be a different year, unlike anything we've ever experienced, even from our perspective. How are you expecting the process to play out and how it might change the way you cover the legislature?
Well, it's going to be slow because you're going to have a hybrid session. A lot of lawmakers are going to be joining remotely, and that just slows things down. So the process will be moving along much slower than usual. And what legislative leaders have been saying to lawmakers is get your bills in the process early, because they're also worried that we could have an outbreak of coronavirus that would shut things down. So, who knows how that's going to play out. They want to get the budget stuff done as soon as possible. So then if they have to shut things down, then they can come back later and work on some of the policy bills.
How are you anticipating this working for you? Are you going to be up physically at the Capitol on a daily basis? Are you going to do a mix of remote covering and in-person? How are you going to work it?
I'm going to try to be up there as much as I can because, frankly, from a reporter standpoint, that's how you get all the good stuff. The problem is there's not a lot of access for us this year. We can't get out on the House floor at all. We can't go in the back hallways of the House. So, if a lawmaker wants to avoid me this year, they're going to have all sorts of excuses to do that. So it makes my job a little bit harder to track those guys down.
Avoid you, Bryan Schott? Come on. That doesn't happen, does it?
Yeah, yes, it does, actually.
I also thought it was interesting. I know I'm pretty sure you've picked up your credentials. I did as well. We've actually, you mentioned all those places we're not going to be able to go, but we have fobs that will give us access to the building ourselves at times. So that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, and as it broke a little bit earlier this week, a couple of days ago, that the Capitol is going to be shut down for the first few days of the session, at least for the public, out of an abundance of caution because they're worried about some of those protests turning violent. So, it's going to be a really weird season. Essentially, the entire third floor is cut off right now. And lobbyists, I don't know how they're going to do their job. I'm hearing they're being encouraged to do more one-on-one meeting rather than aggregate, standing in a herd outside the doors of the House and the Senate. They're not going to be allowed to do that this year. So it's just going to be a really strange session.
Yeah, all across the board, no doubt about that. Bryan, I want to get your thoughts on the new governor, Spencer Cox, coming in for his first legislative session. How do you expect the governor's relationship to match with the legislature?
Well, so far, it's been good. They've really tried to work together and be collaborative. He's reached out a lot, and I think that that's a good thing. He's not an unknown commodity up on the Hill. He's been around since 2013, but he's in the big chair right now, and it's time to strap on the shoulder pads because he's moved into the big leagues. And so, I expect there will be some flare-ups. I expect there will be some disagreements. How he handles that, I'm not sure, but and this as well as I do, the legislature, even though they are a co-equal branch of government, they see themselves as first among equals. Mm-hmm. And so, if push comes to shove, there's 104 of them and one of him. So, that could play out. And I'm not sure where we might see that flare up. It might be during the budget. It might be, out of some bill that just comes out of nowhere. But I haven't really seen any areas that are an inflection point yet.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the budget, because I have heard from, and I'm sure you have too, Democrats are telling me they really like what he put on the table. Are you surprised by that at all?
Yeah, well, the big secret is the legislature completely ignores what the governor puts on the table, at least for the most part. And really, what I've seen in Governor Cox's budget is nothing that the Republicans in the legislature hadn't already proposed. There's a lot of money for education. There's the teacher bonuses. Yeah, there's a few things here and there for rural Utah, and that's good stuff, and infrastructure building. But it's really not too far out of the ordinary of what the Republicans were already already thinking of doing. Now, it's going to be an interesting year because they have almost $1 billion of new revenue to spend. So they've got a lot of cash to spend and a lot of places that need cash. So we'll see how they divvy that up.
Yeah, that's something we will definitely be watching for sure. What else are you going to be keeping your eye on? What are some of the big bills that are at the top of your radar?
Well, police reform is probably going to be a big issue. And then another fight that I'm looking at is what are the governor's emergency powers? As you know, we've been living under a state of emergency because of the coronavirus pandemic since March. And the legislature has a great point. They say we're not designed to live under emergency for that long. So there's going to be a big, discussion that could turn into a fight over how they rein in, how they change those powers. I'm also watching to see if there's an overreaction to what happened with the pandemic, because anything the legislature does is not addressing what's happening right now. It will be for the next time, and I wonder if they're going to overstep their bounds on that.
Right, that's a good point. I want to get your thoughts on redistricting. Obviously, this will extend well beyond the legislative session. We have the new commission this time around that will be drawing out maps and making their recommendations to the legislative committee. What are you going to be watching for? Because this is a big deal, and it is going to play out, as I mentioned, throughout the year. What are you going to be watching for there?
Well, you're not going to see much action during the upcoming session. The only action is going to be who gets on the committee for the legislature. You did mention that we do have the commission, but that's just an advisory board. So, don't. That's when everybody's going to get really upset when they present their maps and the legislature does what they want anyway, which is the way that we knew that it was going to go down when this thing passed. So there has been some talk of getting together and maybe working with them collaboratively, but at the end of the day, the legislature and most importantly the Republicans hold the big hammer, and they're going to do what they want.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on the new administration on the national level as well. We saw some interesting plays over the last couple of years, if you will, with our state legislature resolving to support the president. Of course, we saw an effort to censure Mitt Romney. How do you think things will play out any differently under a Biden administration as opposed to a Trump administration?
I think the big point of conflict is going to be over public lands, and it's going to be mainly over Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. As you know, President Trump reduced those, and there's a push to have the new President Biden reinstate those. And I was speaking with House Speaker Brad Wilson, and he said, you know what, we just want to have some sort of resolution on this. And so they've actually been trying to reach out to the Biden administration. Now, they've got a lot of other stuff on their minds, obviously, since they're taking office, but they've been trying to reach out to them to figure out if there is a way that they can get together and talk and maybe find some sort of compromise. But that's where the really big issue is going to be first, just the whole thing about public lands here in the state.
Yep. All right, Brian, here we go again. Just in a couple of days, things will get underway. You do great work up at the Capitol. How can our viewers follow that work and keep up with you?
Well, I have a newsletter that goes out every single morning. It's called The Rundown. You can subscribe for that for free at sltrib.com. I also have a podcast called Utah Politics that's also available for free.
Yeah, and this is actually a payback appearance for me being on your podcast one time, right?
Well, it's now your turn to come on mine.
Yep, there we go. All right, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.